Conscious Creativity, Mindfulness Meditations, Nataša Pantović. Introduction. It was during the Renaissance that creativity was first seen, not as a matter of divine inspiration, but as a gift of a great learned man to imitate God's ability to create. As Prometheus stole fire of gods and brought it to the mankind, humanity needed to steal the secret of creation from gods to understand its essence. Creativity refers to the invention of any new thing that has value. Someone creative has the ability to learn from a traditional idea and to create new ones. To be creative, we have to choose to be different from everyone else. Learning the skill of creativity is about learning to challenge the existing, learning to trust one's idea, and working hard to change the world that is by default stuck in the space of conventional creativity. Is an essential ingredient of one's spiritual development. Moving from imitating and copying to innovating and using our talents can take time. First, we need to master the particular skill. Musicians know the rhythm. Architects understand engineering concepts. Artists learn about colors and shades. Then, we need to open our minds to the possibility of being different, accepting our uniqueness. Plato Cave. In Plato's cave, prisoners are chained in a cave facing a wall, unable to turn their heads. Imagine walking down a long dark cave that is turned into a prison. Imagine the end of it. You come across a wall in front of which on a stone bench sit people chained to each other and chained to the bench, and they sit there living their lives day after day, not being able to turn or move. Behind them burns a fire, and puppeteers hold a puppet that casts shadows over the walls of the cave. The prisoners look at the shadows, observe their movements, believing that what they see is real. A shadow of a book is a book for them. A shadow of a chair is a chair for them. And because that is the only reality that exists for them, they believe it full-heartedly. And after you have imagined all of this, you ask yourself, how much time in life do I spend really feeling, really seeing, hearing, tasting, and really living? And how much time do I spend observing the movement of the shadows on the wall in front of me? How many hours of the day we spend passively chained to the chairs of our choosing, and how many we spend running in the woods? Can we learn creativity? Personal development is a lifestyle. Constantly improving our mind, emotions, body is a way to keep the link between our brain and our soul. Personal development starts with $1 million question. Who am I? And it develops into hundreds of creativity and transformation tools that we use during our day to reach our highest potential. Me as an individual, me as a social being, me as a lover, as a mother, as a neighbor, and as an inhabitant of Gaia. Who am I? The microcosmos and macrocosmos of my existence all form part of this amazing web called life. Giving respect to the constant growth that we as human beings can experience opens an amazing door to creative thinking, loving relationships, conscious parenting, mindful being, or spiritual well-being, and gives us possibility to tap into the positive force of knowledge. Balancing 4 elements: intuition, thinking, emotions, and sensation. The 4 elements within each of us are air, earth, fire, and water. 4 states of matter life chooses to manifest on earth. Jung describes them as being 4 basic components of a personality: intuition, sensation, thinking, and feeling. Balancing our female and male side, our loving, meditative, artistic, and intuitive self with our intellectual, active, and social self is what brings us completeness and, we hope, happiness. Sages and gurus of our past talk about this balance. Taoists with their concept of yin and yang, yogis with their belief in two opposite energy forces that flow through our body, calling them Ida and Pingala, and Jung that arranges by the four components of personality into two pairs of opposites, sensation versus intuition, and thinking versus feeling. Alchemists with their call to unite, the opposites of Venus and Mars, and Kabbalists with their ancient wisdom, he called Tree of Life, and its magic dance of symbols and opposites. Through the process of self-discovery, we learn mindfulness and get in touch with our conscious behavior, and we start to understand the subconscious forces that form our personality and unconsciously change our attitudes. Understanding the side of us that is ruled by instincts, habits, and someone else's beliefs is the first step towards more complex and beautiful existences. Our soul is the true driver of the chariot called body and mind, and it is a source of an amazing inner knowing. Magic of human brain. Albert Einstein. I must be willing to give up what I am in order to become what I will be. Conscious living, practicing art and sports. Back in time, that has changed only 150 years ago, pre-electricity, our society was affected with inequality, injustice, and a thought that lived within 90% of us for many millennia, the thought of equality. The total population of the world post-electricity rose dramatically, from 500 million to 8 billion. During this time of learning how to live together, we went through both the First and the Second World War. Thanks to our learnings and to the modern technology we have now, we have an opportunity to study or practice ancient spiritual growth and practices from around the world. This exposure to the mix of East and West, South and North gives us some very inspiring insights. A grand piano recital of one of the best world pianists, Grigory Sokolov, that was entitled The Legend is Back, took us on a 3-hour journey through Haydn sonatas and finished with 5 encore's at midnight. When on this single man on a piano marathon, we, as his audience, stopped breathing with every pause he performed. He mastered his and the energy of the entire conference center crowd, taking us into the highest states of consciousness. Both music and sports fully intuitively connect with the mastery of breaths and soul's meditations. There is no exceptional artist, sportsman, or dancer without the mastery of deep breath, circular breath, rapid breath, or deep understanding of the magic of concentration. Ancient spirituality and modern practices around the world. Within the spiritual growth arena, in our drive for goodness, humanity used to exercise tremendous efforts to transform yin into yang, searching for balance within order, applying force to guard chastity, honor, or inner laws. Within our understanding of the wisdom system, like in any learning, we pass through a spiral, slowly climbing up its various levels, physically, mentally, and intuitively, mastering the tools, comprehending its more subtle wisdom and beauty. Exercising Tai Chi, for example, takes us into a journey that as a gift combines breathing, movement, and the energy flow. Watching a master exercise the art, we watch him or her exchange with Tao and divine. Being able to apply a personal growth system within all age groups, kids, youth, mature adults, both women and men, include the old, is a sign of wisdom within that system. While experiencing different yin and yang combinations of consciousness manifestations, we all seek the system that both grows within us and helps us grow. Yoga and Tai Chi as products of yin-based minds. Yoga, as a system of knowledge, went into many details about how energies within our spines interact with the brain, involving drawings, mandalas, sounds, mantras, symbols within each of 7 chakras. Yoga examines how the various physical, mental, or emotional dirt within the body creates emotional blockages. Mastering concentration, meditation, or breath brings both prolonging life or attaining what yogis call enlightenment. Yoga has developed some interesting soldier-like practices for the improvement of willpower. It was designed for mainly men and learned from childhood. It comes from a predominantly yin environment where the state of chaos is a norm, so it required discipline. As a male application of force, it assumed abstinence. The death of a practitioner came at the age of 39 anyway, so the time span of temptations and the strength or ability of practice related to the amount of years of practice was very different. Both yoga and Tai Chi come from the East. Products of the yin-based minds are meant to be practiced alone. Children, because of their young nature, are less attracted to these exercise systems. Western sports as a product of yang-based minds. The Western sports were designed for our youngsters, paying lots of attention to the competitiveness of our approach and the social aspect of the games, both a sign of predominantly yang-based minds. Applying the Western sports to various age groups, we came across the regular nature walks, mountaineering, etc. A tennis player has to play 6 hours straight within a tournament. If he does not have an inner strength and wisdom to perfect his or her breath, there would be no possibility of success. Following the same knowledge, a Serbian top tennis player, Djokovic, moved his diet into a vegetarian, gluten-free one, and later in his life into a raw vegan one, so he could gain benefits from the consumption of live foods. He comes from a yang-based culture. In today's world, meat-dominated diet, where the ancient yin knowledge is intuitive and hidden within the practices of monks, within long periods of Orthodox Christian fasts, or remembered as the natural vow of austerity practiced amongst the poor. One spiritual poetry. Applying the alchemy of love wisdom within the sphere of spiritual growth, we acknowledge that yin and yang forces within Gaia play an important role of how we tap into humanity's for thousands of years executed patterns. Do we do it with a positive charge or with a negative one? Pure logic and wisdom together in unity might help our journey. Listening to our resonating souls, we can either enter a spiral of negativity, medically called depression, or enter into contact with elements allowing poetry, the ocean, or Gaia to heal us. We intuitively use poetry to heal or express joy. Choosing to be alone is easier for a predominantly yin-based mind. A very young girl, a person that comes from a yin-based culture like India or a Mediterranean country, a collective culture, or a yin-based profession, an artist, a doctor, a writer, a musician, a physical worker, an old person, a sick person, and in a yin environment when it is raining or it's cold. A predominantly yang-based mind, a boy in his youth, from a more yang-based culture, an individualistic culture, like an Englishman or a Dutchman, from yang-based professions that requires lots of work with people like managers, lawyers, or salesmen, would happily relax or draw their sadness within a bar full of strangers or with a group of friends playing football or wrestling in the middle of the street, in a young environment where it is warm. Gardening or meditation, walking next to the sea will all help us restore the balance. Within a society of predominantly young minds, where logic is a natural teacher, humanity finds it more difficult to master languages. The stronger the young mind, the stronger the difficulties to verbally express the thoughts. How many Englishmen living in England do you know that have completely mastered a foreign language? Within a society of predominantly yin minds, where wisdom is a natural teacher, humanity finds it easier to master the skill. Chinese is a language, carries within its beauty the positive learning expressions of yin minds, and has embodied mysticism, symbolic thought, and philosophy within their most amazing symbols. The ancient Chinese used the poetry of symbols to express life, ideas, and God. The Chinese characters or symbols, and they have thousands of them, are an expression of concepts, not words. So a simple translation of a set of symbols into a sentence might become a complete adventurous journey of deeply understanding the intuitive thought of the philosopher drawing text. While studying Chinese characters in Cambridge, I asked a Chinese artist, a friend of mine, raised in Taiwan and educated in the US, why I cannot find a straightforward word for beautiful in Chinese. What he said vibrates beautifully within the wisdom within this ancient culture. Beautiful can be beautiful as a flower, or beautiful as a woman, or beautiful as an art expression. Why limit such an amazing feeling within a simplicity of a word? Logic versus wisdom, or yin and yang communication choices. Our ancestors used to live much shorter, some thousands of years ago. However, our patterns are instilled within us as a natural ever-learning implant. A healthy person will see his kids grow to the age of marriage before dying. That would be at the age of 39. Not much time to experience anything but sheer play of hormones within our bodies. At around half our naturally to be lived life, we get edgy to see our kids grow into healthy adults, so we marry. Those days, we used to marry at the age of 15. These days, we marry at the age of 30, slowly moving this line to 40. If we are at all married in our 20s, with the age of 40, we wish to experience it all. When it hurts, listening to our always resonating souls, we choose to heal either being alone or confiding in someone we trust. If deeply hurt, we acknowledge that we are hurt. Being a heart specialist, my uncle, who once told me that all heart doctors die from a weakness of their heart, has died at the age of 70 from a heart attack, and my aunt was experiencing deep sadness following his loss. Afraid for her health, to relax her, my uncle's daughter, also a doctor specializing in sports medicine, gave her some sedatives. They have been teens left as orphans with 3 other siblings, at her age of 13 and his age of 10. At that tender age, for 3 years, they were sent to an orphanage together. At all our family gatherings, I clearly remember them frequently crying and laughing together. At the age of 73, after being sedated for the second day, she refused her medicine, saying, "This pill does not allow me to mourn my brother. I do not want to take them any longer. My deep sadness needs recognition." So she stayed crying for some months to follow. Many yogis, Taoists, Buddhists, and Christian saints use poetry to communicate with God and divine and life. The Brahman's education began even in his mother's womb. During the period of gestation, she was soothed by songs and chants in praise of continence, which in proportion as they won her pleased attention beneficially influenced her future offspring. After the child's birth, and as he grew in years, he was passed on from one preceptor to another until he was old enough to become an auditor of the philosophers. These lived frugally, abstained from animal, food, women, and in a grove outside the city spent their days in earnest discourse, communicating their knowledge to all those who chose to listen. But in their presence, the novice was not permitted to speak, or hawk, or spit, under the penalty of 1 day's banishment from the society. At the age of 37, his student life ceased. Such was the ritual and discipline needed, described in Indian Travels, a manuscript written 2,000 years ago, to build a character of an Asian yogi whose virtue and training equates the one of a philosopher in Greece. Did you notice the life expectancy note? At age of 37, the life ceased. The humanity, or Gaia's unconsciousness, is unavoidable part of our family lives. Gaia's environment is at all times either positively or negatively charged. Following the quantum physics logic, these states change randomly, but in a typical cycle are distributed within the 50-50% ration. A side of a coin will have 50% chance of appearing once you flip it. This law greatly puzzled our ancestors and Chinese, for example, while researching this phenomenon, have created calendars mapping all sorts of heavenly influences onto the human behavior patterns. Building their wisdom system using both intuitive mind, developed through the practice of meditation, as the highest potential of yin states of being, and the reason as the highest potential of yang states of being. They have created the most amazing calendars that listen to the heartbeat of the universe and the elements within their system. There are 5 in number. They have designed a diet whereby each item of food is related to the state of health called macrobiotics, or within the relationship world they speak of, the exchange of female and male energy called Tao of love. And their ancient Confucius thought gave their children a strong drive for goodness. Some thousands of years ago, to prevent the negative manifestation of yin and yang states of consciousness, they built walls around their kingdom. The Chinese wall that for some centuries stopped Mongolians from various invasions. Their kings, who were respected as divine leaders, were separated from masses, where they thought chaos reigned. Within a secluded environment that is only cultivated positive young forces of manifestation, philosophers, artists, the best of warriors, all ready to serve the king. Yin and yang boomerang. Experimenting, applying the quantum physics laws to psychology, we assume that the Gaia's environment in human behavior patterns carry within the law of polarization of atoms, the positive attracts negative and vice versa. Building a highly positive charge with no yin manifestations of consciousness creates reverse effects. Within China, this state of being resulted in a strong build-up of many superstitions. Imagine this one. Feng Shui was a science of determining where to bury the dead ancestors so the good luck will follow the descendants. Priests, who were the carriers of divine wisdom, got so corrupted competing for more money, giving the opposed advices, caused that people, in their confusion, stopped burying the dead, keeping them rotting in the backyards, spreading disease until governments introduced measures to stop the ignorance and the stupidity. Businessmen and good men at work stopped acting when the days were not beneficial, causing the country's collapse during the non-auspicious days. Recently, during the 20th century, within all that commotion, religion was banned. Now, the Chinese worshipped all sorts of gods, ancestors, spirits. Their worship is so profound that no government intervention could possibly change the way people relate to the divine. However, it was the mother logic that China needed as an input to their wisdom system, so they chose communism to help in their overall development, implementing amongst billions the equality of women, free education, and free health. The hermaphrodite universe of each country changes at all times, breathing constantly, evolving whilst humanity's thoughts evolve. Yin and yang balance at home. Whilst cooking, we learned that a saucepan is easiest to clean when we have just cooked or when it is new. If the pot is already burnt, one needs to soak it for hours. Most of us are aware that within the mental and emotional sphere of humanity follows the same pattern. We get worried seeing our kids aggressive, fearing aggression into their adulthood. We get worried seeing our countries deteriorate with ignorant men or women. None of us wishes our kids to grow within a disturbed environment. None of us wishes to see kids lazy, attached to technology or lying. Yet we see our little ones surrounded by modern influencers endlessly shaping our minds. In our ignorance, while setting a family, we believe that kids fall from trees perfect. The amount of work necessary to shape them into conscious human beings is huge. These days, parents aim for much more than a survival. They fight for their kids' emotional and mental and physical betterment, aiming for the highest. Conscious parenting, observing yin and yang within kids. Parenting kids, we are at all times challenged within this matrix of yin and yang forces. For example, a father with more yang forces might act over-aggressively when faced with the strong negative applications of yin or yang within his kids. Accepting this fact, men, more or less, left the early stage parenting in the hands of women, keeping the tasks of a knight, safeguarding the environment, making the day-to-day decisions for the benefit of the family. Animals act subconsciously. A baby dog's behavior is a perfect example of totally young states of consciousness manifestations. Both kids and animals respect the balance of yin and yang forces within each of us. When taking care of a baby Labrador, whilst my friend, the owner, was abroad, I was amazed by the freezing instinct the dog had when meeting any baby human. A 1-year-old baby approached, surprising us all, putting her hands directly onto the dog's jaw. Before any of us grown-ups could react, yet the 6-week-old baby Labrador did nothing to harm the baby, staying super careful within their encounter. Needless to say that the Labrador was not yet trained. The story might have had a different ending with the wolf, yet I had many peaceful and loving encounters with wolves when I knew that they have already eaten. In our household, my cat, that was always free to go wherever she wants, did eat our bird, who was always flying wherever she wanted. only because my kids unconsciously allowed the cat into the house before they fed her. A naturally yin girl with her embedded aversion towards mathematics may make the father furious. If her mom has mastered this aspect of her well-being, has developed in the positive aspect of Yang, logic, she might become even worse in her war against her daughter's natural aversion. The best is to give this task to a teacher. We as parents get too emotionally involved. Important learnings from the yin and yang balance of nature is that using any sort of force, the girl will just go into a further revolt. Remembering our not such a distant past, mathematics were reserved for the boys, while the girls' schools kept their learnings within the area of music, cooking, languages, sewing, etc. A girl was drawing at all times. A music teacher told her to stop drawing during her class. The girl responded that this is my passion. The intuitive logic resonated perfectly within the yin nature of the teacher, who had also had to struggle to materialize her passion within her life. Why is subconscious mind's amoeba covered in mold? The humanity, or Gaia's unconsciousness, is an unavoidable part of our family's lives, or teenagers, and slowing down. Within the yin states of consciousness, slowing down is our guard from all sorts of abuse during the time of slavery, or overwork when cultivating the land or working within a service or product-oriented business. Subconsciously remembering the horrors of the English industrial age, slave drivers, or using kids as labor, when the working day had 16 to 18 hours. In a natural environment, fishing or cultivating land, men slow down in winter, waiting for the land to rest. Women slow down when they have kids. Old people slow down when sick. So nature takes care of our natural cycles. Within the yin and yang states of consciousness, there are positive and negative applications of both slowing down and laziness. Within the logic-dominated society, one can become accustomed to ignoring the signals from the body. We may be slowing down because we intuitively feel a sickness coming our way. How many times have you taken your holiday and collapsed? Within yang states of consciousness, a male who is a manager collapses as soon as on holiday. The yang-based minds have more difficulty to sense their intuitive mechanism, sending signals to slow down. While exploring the negative manifestations of the yin state of consciousness, we all know what the land that is not attended to will not give fruits, that a house that is not maintained will collapse under elements, that a child that is abused will not have an inspiring adulthood, that if our garbage is not collected, we will experience the spread of diseases. Our logical part is afraid of this chaos. A woman more intuitively feels the need for slowing down, and she can direct the man within the cycle. This is why when yin meets yang in harmony, balance follows their lives. When they have kids, this balance is disturbed, both when in a negatively charged environment or with the inflow of a strong yang, a boy, or a strong yin, a girl manifestation of unconscious behavior of humankind. Within Gaia, this amazing breathing, ever-changing hermaphrodite environment, that is, in her own sufficient life flourished. Within her ever-changing atmosphere, resonance is supreme. We, as human beings and souls, materialize on earth to experience various manifestations of yin and yang states of consciousness, in exchange with Gaia's environment. Nuit, mindful living. Walking this story that has happened on the full moon in August, during the festival of nights in the surrounding hills of monastery Manasya in Serbia, we will explore the various manifestations of the state of consciousness, some geometrical figures and fairy tales are whispered within my soul. Old Greek philosophers used mythology to pass the wisdom of many subconscious struggles we mortals experience, using the most gruesome storytelling tools to keep our memory alive, fighting against the foggy existence of any words put together that needs a solid emotional platform to give us even the slightest chance to remember this moment. If subconscious mind is more powerful than conscious, how to live consciously? The subconscious mind is an integral part of the mind that modern psychologists acknowledge as an invisible layer of human consciousness. My research suggests a form of an amoeba rather than a layer, a hermaphrodite morphed amoeba that in some of its manifestations is covered in mold. I'll tell you in a minute why. The subconscious mind patterns are programmed by repetition, soul-to-soul contacts, and deep emotions. If the emotion is fear, we run a risk of raising a child that will not properly develop, own self, but stay in the shadow of the parent's willpower, or a soldier that stays overpowered with his king, who consciously or subconsciously wishes him to stay mentally and emotionally weak so he can kill for his king. When the East meets West within the name of research. While executing my humble research on Chinese writing characters, I came across some very inspiring findings passed to us mortals from ancient Chinese philosophers. And their wisdom inspired knowledge. They depicted the mind as both feelings and thoughts flowing from one's heart and brain. When I found out that if one is saying I, he points at the tip of his nose, an inner smile symbolically connected the two Eastern philosophies within me. An Indian guru, Shivananda, claims that unit consciousness meets the universal within the Soham meditation. I am it is what we repeat exactly when the breath enters the body. Today, while meditating on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, facing the east, I let the sun and water, as the most imminent physical sources of life, whisper secrets of the life of the unconscious. God, Shiva, Zeus, Yahweh, the divine attributes of omnipotence, inspired me this morning using the tone of the voice of Tarantino's main black movie character and actor Samuel L. Jackson, who have been seen acting within The Hateful Eight, a film released in 2015. Tarantino is an American director who, in the early 1990s, as an independent filmmaker, released Reservoir Dogs and wrote the script for this film in 3.5 weeks, believe it or not. The voice of this black man stirring a deep emotional effect within me. For the sounds altered, mirrored all the cosmos with the collective unconsciousness that represents blacks, Maoris, Aborigines, slaves, or American Indians struggle against this molded amoeba of the subconscious of humanity. Unconscious mind and religions. Kabbalists use blessings and curses while addressing this grey egg. To use an allegory of an alchemist, a hermetic vase or philosopher's stone shaped as an egg symbolizing creation. Hinduists work with tamas, rayas, and self-based behavior patterns, claiming that it is possible to control a kundalini, symbolically represented as a snake, if and only if one is a guru, the banisher of darkness. Christians and Muslims use devotion, believing anything else to be a black magic act, leading eventually to the misuse of power in the same way fascists have abused it, having in all sattvic positive behavior patterns, causing mass murders, killing for goodness, regarding of the do not kill, the first ever principle we have learnt as humanity. While exploring our concept of unconsciousness, Hinduists talk about belonging to a karmic group or belonging to a kasta system, an elaborate matrix of supposedly reincarnated behavior patterns. Within the same quest explaining types of human beings, an astrologer talks about signs of the zodiac, or a Gestalt psychologist explores a family, or nation constellations. For indeed, our consciousness does not create itself. It wells up from the unknown depths. In childhood, it awakens gradually, and all through life, it wakes each morning out of the depths of sleep from an unconscious condition. It is like a child that is born daily out of the primordial womb of the unconscious. In fact, closer investigation reveals it is not only influenced by the unconscious, but continually emerges out of it in the form of numberless spontaneous ideas and sudden flashes of thought. Quoted by Jung, Psychology and Religion in the East. This multi-layered animal resonates with instincts, security, fears, and habits, while in the first chakra ruled by safety fears with smaller kids and their parents. This would be a fear of dying of hunger, whilst transcending into higher states of being within the Hindu philosophy, moving from the first to the seventh chakra, as patterns deepen and we insist on virtues such as physical, mental, and emotional cleanliness, rhythm, devotion to beauty, gratefulness, compassion, honesty, goodness, and conscious behavior. We hope our little ones will stop manifesting in consciousness into a form of rotten molded amoeba and become inspired, conscious human beings. Everything subliminal holds within it the ever-present possibility of being perceived and represented in consciousness. The unconscious is an irrepresentable totality of all subliminal psychic factors, a total vision and potential. It constitutes the total disposition from which consciousness singles out tiny fragments from time to time. Jung, Forward to Introduction to Zen Buddhism, quoted. Mystical Christians and Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists and alchemists all claim with almost certainty that the only way to salvation is to pass the knowledge gained for the benefit of all. Christians and Muslims believe in the ultimate Christ sacrifice for the benefit of all humanity. Alchemists symbolically represent the spiritual path towards enlightenment, as a pelican feeding her baby birds with his own or her own blood, represented in Ripley's scrolls as a dragon. On the other side of the world, Tibetan Buddhists devised an elaborated meditation practices where the practitioner takes the suffering of the rest of humanity as the highest ever to spiritually experience goal. My wish is not to convey nihilism or destiny predetermined thought forms. We as humanity have mastered these. Just study any world's religion or Jung to further understand these. It is not suffering that has ever fascinated me, but the resurrection of Christ within the universal spiritual growth spiral. It is not the circle, but the spiral in my limited knowledge I attempt to follow, through the understanding the poetry of humanity's consciousness expressions, through respecting the East and West, Shiva and Shakti, ancestors, saints and scientists, mythology and knowledge accumulated within the humankind. As within the old and forever abused book, the Old Testament, mythology, where Lucifer shine light through our understanding of pain, as souls, we wish to move out of our fascination with pain, out of the predetermined destiny path, out of constant fear. As a billionaire manager in the US would do, with his knowledge embedded experiences, he would fully understand he knows nothing, but he will employ the best quality specialists to protect his processes, know-how strategies, human resources, to perform his marketing, guide his finances, and he will trust their abilities to execute this complex task of staying the best within the market. Or, as a billionaire manager in Italy or Japan would do, with his knowledge and experience, he would know with certainty he can trust none but his family members, and he will employ endless family members to support him in his growth. Yet we, humanity, for their own sake, for our own sake, wish them not to kill all others in this process. Or the lawmakers who know they know nothing of how complex the human nature is, because the circumstances constantly change, to inquire, examine, and research so that humanity with all its animals, plants, and rivers will benefit. We will attempt to explore a spiral. In practices, what does this mean? That day, following the trust in goodness as intention, I walked through the streets, meeting people truly, soul to soul, not just slightly artificially gliding through our buyers' sellers' relationships. My kids were with me, now teenagers subconsciously linked to that karmic group, creating a destructive smoke around my contact with others, forcing me to remember this lesson in time and space. Knowing that each one of us connects with own family, serving the best possible food or exhibiting that extra touch of care, I get truly interested in people with their inner smile when speaking to them. Applying my local experience, buying pasticci from a familiar place, I have no intent to flatter him, but to convey appreciation for his hard work. I told the seller that he bakes the best pasticcis in the world. Listening to my sweet talk, my kids interrupted me with an unrelated chatter several times. My dear conscious friends, you probably do recognize this impulse of an unconscious element within the human nature as an unstoppable urge to interrupt the conscious element from expressing and manifesting towards all the strange others. Your sick mom will unconsciously interrupt any of your expression of beauty towards others. It is within our willpower to go back to the good intent to react, return, and re-exercise love, understanding beauty towards strangers. It is subconscious fear that fights against our refocusing. Surely, for a good subconscious reason, a husband fearing his wife living with the best man, or a wife fearing her husband to go war for a cause, or the fact that an unselfish element within the very best of us has led some to abandon families, leaving own families to heal others. Many a saint has done exactly this. Physically weaker or sicker we are, more we attach to subconscious fears of humanity. When kids' focus is within their hunger, there is nothing else that can entertain so good as food. Do you blame them? In our past, kids did die of hunger. Focusing was an important keeping alive instinct. In our search for happiness, we are very efficient in this quest. We quickly glance from one item to another, sometimes never truly realizing what a germ we have encountered. Whilst listening to a non-stop musician from Senegal playing his harp-like instrument, standing on a street corner for around 20 minutes, I knew with certainty of an orphan theatre-goer that he, compared with the best from the halls of London, most expensive theatre arrangements, I felt deeply privileged to be experiencing this moment, truly stopping to listen to his voice, creating a mystical experience. My acknowledgement of this unexpected beauty, my son's focus was on his hunger. We still do carry a possibility to recognize profound beauty within a street performer, having a choice to stop and listen to him creating magic or walk away distracted by some unconscious elements. Later that eve, at Notte Bianca with friends, I experienced the same unconscious element manifested as a drive of fun and pleasure. If one is born with the karmic circumstances, a family or a city that has worked hard through centuries to uplift culture like London, Berlin, and St. Petersburg, or we had the most amazing luck to have artists as parents, we have more trouble understanding that culture needs money, huge effort, and deep devotion. It is a taste that is trained, an effort that lives with us constantly, the beauty that is not obvious. Born in Belgrade city, that sponsored culture left, right, and center, I've seen many lose the appreciation of how expensive and difficult it is to create true art. Exercising their unconscious element, seeking pleasure, two young Spanish ladies looking for a flamenco show approached our table in a cafe on the straight street whilst we were absorbed in the most interesting performance of young ladies performing a cabaret on the balconies above our tables. Behind the courts, prostitutes hid in these houses about a century back in time. Valletta is the capital of European culture, this year with huge amounts of money injected into every show. A foreigner invited to perform. These ladies were from Holland, would be an internationally acclaimed artist, whose past training and experience has been carefully researched. Seeking the ultimate pleasure, their flamenco show, they interrupted our exploration of the performance of the Dutch cabaret. Following their unconscious fear to miss pleasure, they could not possibly interact with any beauty, and they did their best to disturb our experiences of the same. Respecting the knowledge of our ancestors, saints, and scientists, applying clear reason and intuitive wisdom following this dynamic of fear, we now ask our souls how to live healthier, happier, stronger. Researching metamorphosis of psyche, unconsciousness, and enlightenment. Only by discovering alchemy have I clearly understood that the unconscious is a process and that ego's rapports with the unconscious and his context initiate an evolution, more precisely, a real metamorphosis of the psyche, quoted by Jung quote about alchemy. In our wish to relate to omnipotent omniscience and omnipresence, God, we use art, music, or poetry to express since ratio has no unobstructed pathways to a divine. The mystical knowledge is gained through a lifelong research and devotion to beauty, God, divine, through contemplating the universe or comprehending air, earth, water, and sun as the most immanent physical sources of life. These are different spiritual paths to enlightenment, from the Himalayan monk meditating, through the fisherman out in the open, to the artist composing a masterpiece. Forgetfulness and unconsciousness. Until recently, we couldn't quite understand our neighbors, even if we tried. The first polyglot Bible was published around 1570, containing a text in 5 languages: Hebrew, Syriac, Greek, Latin, and Chaldean. For primitive man, his country is neither a geographical nor a political entity. It is that territory which contains his mythology, his religion, all his thinking and feeling in so far as he is unconscious of these functions. His fear is localized in certain places that are not good. The spirits of the departed inhabit such and such a wood. That cave harbors devils who strangle any man who enters. In yonder mountain lives the great serpent. That hill is the grave of the legendary king, Near a spring or rock or tree, every woman becomes pregnant. That ford is guarded by snake demons. This towering tree has a voice that can call certain people. Primitive man is unpsychological. Psychic happenings take place outside him in an objective way. Even the things he dreams about are real to him. Jung, lecture, archaic man, collected works, civilization in transition. A German philosopher, Goethe, so much loved and appreciated by Jung, has done his first novel at the age of 20, The Sorrows of a Young Werther, 1774. A literary celebrity by the age of 25, Goethe has written 4 novels and treatises on botany, anatomy, and color, more than 10,000 letters, and nearly 3,000 drawings. The same constructive consciousness manifestation-focused age happened to Nietzsche, who has also self-published all his work. Tolstoy had a family fortune supporting his knowledge, so his wisdom and beauty of expression kept enlightening the humankind even when he was very old. Giordano Bruno, for example, spent whole of his life searching and teaching science as a priest, or Tesla pioneered the science of his and our time. Reading the works of these saints, we must wonder, can our intelligence even comprehend its wisdom and depth? While rearing our knowledge, perhaps we should be planting a walnut tree instead of searching for instant gratifications, trusting the local knowledge field with plenty time and space to express, choosing the best possible teachers, preferably poets as suggested by Jung, appreciating the wisdom of our ancestors within this versatile humanity might help us enter the path of quantum physics, applied psychology, and deeper emotional comprehending of ancient philosophies. The story of Isaac and Bartholomew's Aurora. Exercising local knowledge is like inputting various little-known parameters into any picture, combining Gaia's wellness, health, and pleasure within a matrix of each and every one of us. The humanities basket of experiences is so complexly bound together we can see a spiral in all our progress, including history. When in my 30s, I hated the story of Isaac, the son of Abraham, and Sarah and Abraham's willingness to follow God's command to sacrifice Isaac as his newborn baby boy. Such a horrible myth, where God establishes a relationship with Abraham through the sacrifice of his son. Much later I learned that we all hate it, because no intelligent human being will ever rationally debate killing of his own son for any God's sake. It is a twisted mythological story of the Old Testament, so that a natural parent's hatred will burn in our hearts with a justified anger towards even the thought form that supports such sick thinking, with a strong drive to test it, remove it, and collectively attack it. Light as a symbol of divine. In art, the light is used to symbolically represent the wisdom within this versatile, forever-changing universe. So Christian saints or angels have the light above their heads. In common, we both, the other surviving early papyr of John's Gospel, page 45, the manuscript contains consistently the use of nomina sacra. The initial system of nomina sacra apparently consisted of just 4 or 5 words, called nomina divina, the Greek word for Jesus Christ, Lord, God, and possibly Spirit. Use of nomina sacra in the Orthodox Christian art, the opening verses of Revelation, Jesus Christ as ICCX. In movies, the light is used within films, like in the film Titanic, to increase the emotional intensity with an audience when they are hearing the old lady's splendid past. When watching the film, do notice how her eyes always shine, leaving us with this collective trust that she must be sincere. Within the humanity's past, We met these inspired eyes when philosophers preached, or when artists expressed their love for God, but also when we listened to some inspired youths with their Holy Spirit-blessed TV personality. Even the angels thought Adam, the Lord of all, and they were about to salute him with Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. When God caused sleep to fall upon him, and then the angels knew that he was but a human being, the purpose of the sleep that enfolded Adam was to give him a wife, so that the human race might develop and all creatures recognize the difference between God and man. A Hebrew story about family, a priest explaining Old Testament. The history of written expression. Throughout history of ancient Rome, the Greek was spoken by well-educated elite who acquired Greek tutors from educated Greek prisoner slaves. Within the Byzantine Empire, the Greek was never replaced by Latin, also called Romanic languages. China led the book's printing revolution. The first completed printed book on paper is a Diamond Sutra in the British Library of 868 AC during the 19th century. By the 10th century, 400,000 copies of some sutras and pictures were printed, and some other Confucian classics were in print. Around the year 10,040, the first known movable type porcelain printing press was created in China, Sheng. Copper movable type printing originated in China at the beginning of the 12th century. It was used in large-scale printing of paper money issued by the Northern Song dynasty. Around 12,030, Koreans invented a metal-type movable printing using bronze. The Korean form of metal movable type was described by the French scholar Henri Jean Martin as extremely similar to Gutenberg's. Christian monasteries carried on the Latin writing tradition in the Western Roman Empire. Before the adoption of the printing press, books were copied by hand, expensive and rare. Smaller monasteries had only a few dozen books. At the end of the Middle Ages, the Papal Library in Avignon and Paris, Library of Sorbonne, held only around 2,000 books. The scriptorium of the monastery was usually over the chapter house, where artificial lights were forbidden, done only in daylight by enthusiastic students. The history of printing in Europe from 500 after Christ to 1800 follows an interesting line. European output of manuscripts and printed books 500 after Christ till 1800 after Christ. In mid-20th century, European book production has risen to over 200,000 titles per year. Throughout the 20th century, libraries have faced an ever-increasing rate of publishing, sometimes called an information explosion. Do you ever wonder, within this explosion, what is your truth? Burning books and forbidden books. According to Elaine Pagels, in After Christ 367, Athanasius, the zealous bishop of Alexandria, issued an Easter letter in which he demanded that Egyptian monks destroy all such unacceptable writings, except for those he specifically listed as acceptable, even canonical, a list that constitutes the present New Testament. When the burning is widespread and systematic, the destruction of books and media can be a component of cultural genocide. We all, with pain, remember the burning of the Library of Alexandria, the destruction of the Aztec codices by Itzcoatl in 1430s, and the burning of Maya's indigenous American civilization's manuscripts on the order of Bishop Diego de Landa in 1562. According to a Wikipedia source, in 1244, as an outcome of the Disputation of Paris, 24 carriage loads of Talmuds and other Jewish religious manuscripts were set on fire in the streets of Paris. Forbidden books. We still find the list of forbidden books by Inquisition within the Archives of Vatican. The section can also be called My Recommended Books of Wisdom. Band name works. Complete Works 1585, Dante Alighieri. Complete Works 1600, Bruno Giordano. The Inquisition's ban on the reprinting was lifted in 1718. Complete Works 1616 to 1835, Nicolaus Copernicus. Complete Works to 1835, Johannes Kepler. 1663, Descartes' René Meditations. 1641, Les Passions de l'Âme. 1649, Opera Philosophica. 1679-1690, Spinoza, Baruch, Tractatus Theologico Politicus. 1677, Opera Posthuma. 1827, Kant, Manual, Critique of Pure Reason. 1781, revised. 1787. 1841, Balzac, Honore de omnes fabulae amatoriae. 1894, Zola Emilie, Opera Omnia. 1948, Sartre, Jean-Paul. Until 1959, Victor Hugo, Notre-Dame de Paris. 1831, Les Misérables. 1862. A subjective truth. When discussing the Lady Truth, we acknowledge that it always connects to our subjective soul's view of the world. The truth means my objective experience of reality. So with this in mind, do you know why Germans have the best bread on Gaia, and why does this matter? If you are born German, then you might even ignore a need to debate this little so subjective truth, agreeing with a reason powered with intuitive knowledge of a traveler who explored 50+ countries on all the continents and is Gaia conscious. Your ancestors' hundreds of years of baking research that has gradually improved a super unhealthy white bread into a super tasty healthy loaf is within your set of local knowledge and experiences. If you are in your 20s, you will see no value in this statement. If you are anywhere over 40, you will resonate with it, because your health research has already convinced you of how difficult it is to get rid of an unhealthy piece of bread, whilst getting rid of gluten, claims Djokovic, the world's champion who got his first golden medal in tennis. When public libraries appeared up to the 18th century, books were often chained up to a bookshelf or desk to prevent theft. As you can imagine, it was not a book lovers who would ever steal, for how many book lovers were poor or uneducated? Jews didn't have quite a public library where a stranger could possibly hope to learn Hebrew and explore the script within their local knowledge setup. Judaism values the Torah scroll to such an extent that if placed in a synagogue, it must be written by hand on parchment, so a printed book would not do. In the Islamic Golden Age, 8th century to 13th, Islamic calligraphy, miniatures, and bookbinding flourished, yet none of the images within the books had any religious connotations. Yaqubi, 9th century, says that in this time, Baghdad had over 100 booksellers. Today, we find the most beautiful poems exploring God, Allah, yet the illustrations are very generic, flowers or simple decorations. Within Islam, we find no image of Christ or Allah, so no idol worship would take place. Listening to our historians, we know for certain that the destroyed books and artworks are irreplaceable, often changing history in various ways. If you are head of your own pack, whether living in a forest of Amazonia or fishing through oceans, you try hard to understand the world the best you can. It's not always easy for all the followers of the pack to understand that life is a complex venture, always demanding new learnings. Being too busy arguing various points of views, philosophizing, or fighting own partner, we assume that somewhere else animals do not need rearing, plants need watering, sick do not need care, and children fall perfect from the sky. Within this lifelong quest, so many of us create our own little universes, marrying and building our own perfect families. Yet the reflection inside the life mirror says over and over that we are, especially when expressing judgments, too hasty. Respecting the knowledge of our ancestors, saints and scientists, applying clear reason and intuitive wisdom within this dynamic Orphic hermaphrodite universe of unconscious mind manifestations, at this stage of our evolution, we ask our own souls how to live life healthier, happier, or stronger. Ancient Alchemy Exploration and George Ripley within Ripley's Scrolls. Respecting the knowledge of alchemists within this dynamic Orphic hermaphrodite universe of consciousness manifestations, we now examine the mysticism within the teachings of the 16th century and the 17th century Ripley's Scrolls. At the top of Ripley's Scrolls, a large robed bearded figure greets the researcher wishing to enter this magic dance of words and drawings. Identified as an Egyptian god of healing, Thoth or Hermes,